It is the Danger Show podcast, episode 10. And my guest today, kind enough to get in early here on the launch of this podcast. The rest of the world's been podcasting for decades. I'm finally in it in 2026 after decades on radio. Justin Labar, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Danger. Yeah, I mean, when I hear that Danger finally has a podcast, I want to get in on that.
Well,
So
you
thanks for
got
having
in
me.
early. I remember we have a mutual friend, Jeff Lewis.
Mhm.
Shout out Jeff Lewis, the
Thank you.
man. Um, I remember him telling me about you years ago, and you were into wrestling and you were starting a wrestling podcast. What year did you start talking wrestling online or on radio? Where did it all start?
We did a few trial episodes in the fall of 2009, but the first week of January 2010, myself and my buddy, his name's Josh Eisenberg, we started doing it every single week. It was called Chair Shot Reality, and it was meant to be an on-camera, formatted more around as a TV show. At that time, if the word podcast was being used, it was people recording audio via their phone to like a blog talk or some whatever platform was out there. And from that, we did that from 2010 to 2018, and it actually evolved from our basement to using the studios at Point Park University, both of our alma maters. So, it got a nice professional look. And then somewhere in the mix of there, I was also doing my own more traditional audio podcast or radio show called Wrestling Reality. So I, kind of did a little bit of both. Did the TV version or the video version of a podcast for wrestling. Did your more traditional audio only. And did all those until Chair Shot Reality till 2018, and then I did some of my own podcasting until right about 2020 and right about the pandemic, and then transitioned over and was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to contribute to SiriusXM.
When did you start to feel like you were getting some traction with your podcast, where you started saying, "Okay, there we got a following"? And I haven't been. So I was on radio for a long time, and we had Nielsen ratings or Arbitron, depending on when it was. But it was different, right? Because we'd wait to get the ratings to come in to look at them and decide if we were successful or not. You really kind of it can be very humbling on this side of it online, because the clicks are the clicks, right? The views, the comments, the engagement. Sometimes you get the algorithm and you're like, wow, I did great. And other times you're like, wow, a couple hundred people might have tuned in. And I can only imagine, you said you started in 2010. It was a different time. When did you start to feel like you were really getting some people were tuning in?
I would say 2011 or 2012, when we would start to travel and go to like WW events, just going as fans. And we would, it started as just saying on the podcast, hey, we're gonna, we'd find what's a good bar, what's a good spot to hang out and get some food and drinks before going to the arena. And we'd say, oh, we're gonna go be at such and such place, and maybe we'll see you there. And people actually just started to come, it was small numbers, but and then then it became an organized thing. It's like, hey, we can actually organize a watch, a meet and greet, a get together. And then eventually it evolved really to when we had the big events, when it was like WrestleMania week, going and being in that city and like actually purposely, putting together a real event and calling some wrestlers to have them as guests, and then setting up meet and greet where, we'll pay said wrestler a fee to be there. And then we'll determine what we're going to charge to, for fans to come and meet said wrestling a picture, and we try to make some money, try to help offset
started a business then.
Yeah. But I would say 2011, 2012, when we started realizing that people were watching and listening as they're showing up, or recognizing you if you go to a wrestling event. So that's kind of when you figure, well, it's got something behind it here.
So I have up on the screen now, our guest is Justin Labar. He's the host of Busted Open Radio on SiriusXM, which we'll talk a lot about this coming up, but they just launched a WWE channel that your show will be featured on. And you're the general manager of Trib Live High School Sports Network. How long have you been with Trib Live?
I've been with the Trib since 2009. It's kind of crazy how that happened. I was in my 2009. 2009 was my senior year. I graduated in the spring of 2009, and so I'm in my senior year at Point Park University, majoring in broadcasting. And, my aspiration is, sports and being a sports reporter and anchor on TV. I think the long-term goal probably, let's go be hosting Sports Center in 10 years. That's, and that was kind of the goal at the time. And so that January of 2009, the Steelers advance and they're going to the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not originally from Pittsburgh, so I'm not a Yins, I'm not a Steeler fan, but I see them going.
Are you from the DC area? I think I saw your Commanders, Capitals.
Yeah.
I saw as your teams. Okay.
Yeah, but anyways, I see the Steelers win, the AFC Championship. They're going to the Super Bowl. They're going to go down the Super Bowl's going to be down in Tampa, and they're going to play Arizona. And at the time at Point Park, I was like the sports director for both the radio and the TV station. Everybody knew me as, I was the sports guy. And so I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. Like, I wonder if I could get the university to send me down to Florida to cover the Super Bowl for our university's publications. And they weren't going to do that, but it just so happened that one of the adjunct professors in the journalism department at the time was a reporter at the Trib, and he introduced me to who the editor at the time was. And basically, long story short, they agreed to send me down to Florida and get some content for them, because at the time the Trib was, it was a newspaper first, and this was not unique to just them, but newspapers were just starting to expand and into multimedia and expand and realize they had to have video on their website. And so they basically sent me down to capture video and do everything but the game. So the alumni breakfast, and I got some interviews and sit downs with like Donnie Shell and Bart Starr, and of course trying to weave in topical things about that year's game and this and that. And I did something like 20 something videos that were shot and edited, and I on camera, and the Trib loved it. They had nobody else in the company was doing anything quite like that. I mean, some of the still photographers were starting to mess with video, but so they gave me an internship that summer, a paid internship, and it was just kind of like, let's see how this goes. And I did that for the summer, and then they hired me full time by the end of the summer. So it was kind of wild, because I never thought that I'd go to work for what was a newspaper. But when I sat and weighed the options, it was like, I always figured that I would go out, I'd graduate, and I'd go out into some small town market and just do the traditional path. I'm gonna go work at a small TV station. I'm gonna work my way up. I might be covering minor league teams or whatever. I'm gonna work my way up. And so it's like, well, I could do that path, or I could stay in Pittsburgh, a top 25 market. There are some of the most storied professional franchises here, professional sports franchise teams.
Yes.
So I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but like, I'm immediately going to get credentialed to be at Steeler practices, to be at Steeler games, to be at Penguins practice, to be at Penguins games, and be the first person for the Trib whose sole focus is to do video. I'm still going to be one man banding as I would have if I went to a small town, but at least I'm one man banding again, and I'm doing it here in Pittsburgh. And so started then, and I've I'm still with them.
That reminds me a little bit of kind of how I got into broadcasting. I was hearing you say that. I went to college at the University of Memphis down in Tennessee. That's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I was I was the sports director for the FM radio station there, the college radio station.
Yeah.
And I did play-by-play for the Memphis Tiger basketball and football for 2 seasons in the mid-90s. I'm a little older than you. And I loved it. I got to do that. And one of the things I always tell a story is we got to go at the basketball games. We were like right beside the station, like that was actually calling the game. Mm-hmm. Like, in Pittsburgh, that'd be like DVE, right. They got the college radio station set up right next to them. And it was me, right? Some little redheaded kid. And I did the football too. And the same thing. And I just started inviting people because I got to be down on the side with my headphones on. I started inviting, like, I called the mayor and said, you want to come down and be on the halftime show? And next thing you know, the FM was getting mad because I was having celebrities come down and put the headsets on and be on the show. But it was cool for them because they got to be on. But here's what I love sports too, Justin, and this is the hard part for me. I was like, man, I love sports so much. Going to the game and having to work during all the games seemed like a little bit of a bummer to me. So I kind of pivoted and went to the radio station and tried to be funny. And I ended up getting the nickname Danger. And the rest is history. I did a long career of being Danger. I'm not very dangerous, Justin, but you you found a niche. You got in at the beginning of a new technology, really. Social media and the internet and having to do things differently. TV, radio, and newspaper, they're dinosaurs now, right? I mean, the future is what you're doing. But if you found it, I mean, you obviously love wrestling, right?
Mhm.
So did you know when you did that you were going to get a chance to make wrestling part of what your career is?
So I was kind of doing two races at a time, kind of running two races at a time. I was doing the traditional path, being at the Trib, covering mainstream sports. And to your point, I see what you mean about, kind of a bummer working during the game. That's where it did help, the fact that I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh. And so I'm not a Penguins fan. I'm a fan of their rival, the Capitals. I'm not a Steeler fan. I'm a Commanders fan. So that made it a little bit easier to actually to work and stay focused and not get caught up in.
And I would agree with that too. So
Yeah.
University of Memphis, that's where I went to school. That's where I was raised. I mean, like that was the team in town. Penny Hardaway, the game's on and there's nobody on the streets. And Memphis is a top 50 market, so Pittsburgh's twice as big as it. But I agree with you. Like if I got hired to work for the Steelers or the Pirates or the Penguins, and I live in Pittsburgh just like you now. I'm married to Yinzer. I got Yinzer kids. But it would be different, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same as the team that you cry when they lose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was, there was a few times where I was at a Penguin game or series and they're beating the Capitals, and I am having to work and I am having to stay professional, but but no, I mean, in terms of this, you asked, I was kind of doing two races. I had the traditional cover mainstream sports, work for the Trib. That was my regular paycheck. That's my benefits. That's what I need to keep going. But then I had the wrestling podcast over on the side here, doing Share Shot Reality, and I was doing it. We were getting paid for it. The websites that were airing it were paying us and giving us a budget, so it did bring in some income. But I'm kind of doing that race, just kind of seeing where it leads, not really knowing. I think early on, you think maybe I get to WWE. Wouldn't it be great to be to be able to be a talking head on the TV? As the years go by, especially getting married and having kids, you realize, okay, that's probably not real ideal to have that kind of schedule to be traveling around and that's there's so few.
I mean, our mutual friend who works for AEW, he's on a plane.
Yeah,
going
it's just so I didn't really know where the wrestling was going to lead. I just knew that I was enjoying it, getting a little bit of money for it on the side. But again, it's not, it wasn't. If I stopped doing it, it wasn't going to completely blow me up financially. And so I just kind of kept doing it just to see where it led. And so, I'm very fortunate that the way things have developed now here in 2026, that I am getting paid for two things. Again, I have the Trib, which is, again, I always say is like my bread and butter. I've been with them since 2009. I met my wife because of them. So it's what feeds my retirement fund. It's what is my, primary gig, more days, more hours of the week than anything else. But I'm fortunate that then over here I can, on a Sunday, you said co-host, and I appreciate I'm one of several co-hosts. I definitely don't want to, I'm not the lead of Busted Open Radio, but I'm fortunate enough that I get to be the regular co-host on Sundays every week. And then they have me contribute and fill in throughout the weeks if needed. So, I'm just fortunate that it works out that, hey, I can have this gig that keeps me busy on Monday through Saturday, some weeks, and then I can have the Sunday gig with Busted Open. So I get to, do a little bit of everything, make money doing everything. And I'm, it's been a fortunate development, the way everything kind of shaped out.
So I will tell you that, being from the South and from Memphis, I'd always heard Memphis was a big wrestling market. In the South, wrestling. We love wrestling in the South, Justin.
We start every one of our Sunday shows, myself and my co-host Jonathan Hood, because there's a song. There actually is a song that says this, but so we sing it. We go, talking to you about a little wrestling. RASSLIN. That's wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling's real in the South, man.
Yeah.
And if you say it ain't, you'll get that's a fight. Those are fighting words right there. But I thought it was big in the South, but I pulled up the most famous wrestlers of all time. And this was a survey done by Sports Illustrated, an article that came out recently. And 2 of the top 20 wrestlers of all time are Pittsburgh guys. My guy didn't even make it, Jerry the King Lawler. That's Kurt Angle was number 12 and Bruno Sammartino number 10. Yeah. I've actually had a chance to interview on my radio show Kurt Angle before. I think he's a great guy. Bruno Sammartino, I never got to interview him, but I did meet him at an event, and just the same, salt of the earth, shaking hands, smiling.
So I got to with Bruno. I was very fortunate. This would have been probably 2011 or 2012. There was a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. At the time, it was located in upstate New York town, which is escaping me off the top of my head. But I got to go. I was up there one year, and Bruno was getting an award, and so I got to, and I knew some mutual friends that were much closer, knew Bruno, that introduced me. So I'm getting to sit and have dinner with Bruno Sammartino and also another Pittsburgh wrestler, Dominic DiNucci. I was with him, and just to sit there and to hear the stories and to see the wine, the red wine consumed. I mean, it was just a tremendous experience. It was, Bruno was a really good experience, good guy, nice guy. And then when you read, I wasn't alive for it, but when I read and or watch back what he did in terms of how long he was booked as a top guy and how many times he was the headliner selling out Madison Square Garden, it's pretty amazing.
Was showmanship as much a part of wrestling when Bruno Sammartino was in his day? Was he, because I think of the best wrestling match ever. One guy's got to walk out and insult the other guy's mother, because then you can't turn the channel. I got to see how this ends up. He just made fun of that guy's mother. Were they doing that back in the Bruno Sammartino days?
Well, I mean, I think yes. I mean, it was done in different ways. Wrestling at that time was still regional. You'd only hear them be at the Channel 11 studio to talk. It wasn't as national. Obviously, of course, there was no social media, so there was still definitely showmanship to it. I mean, I would argue that showmanship's always been important in professional wrestling. Everybody has their different things they like more. I mean, it's more athletic today than it's ever been in terms of what the guys and girls can do. And to some fans, especially older school fans, they might say it's too choreographed, too unbelievable, unreal. But that's just kind of the evolution of things. But I mean, showmanship to me is always important. To me, it's you're gonna go to a wrestling show. You're gonna see a lot of moves. You're gonna watch however many matches. You're gonna see a lot of moves. So you got to figure out what what can you do that's gonna make people when they're driving home remember you and say, man, I saw a lot of guys, but that one guy. And I think it's showmanship. It's from the moment your music hits, the moment you walk out of the curtain, how it is you present and engage. I mean, oftentimes when you watch a match, again, moves are moves, but it's a lot of times it's the stuff that a wrestler does in between the moves. It's how they engage with their opponent, or how they engage with the audience, or how they engage with the television camera. So yeah, I mean, showmanship's always important. It just,
I'm surprised
to varying degrees.
I mean, wrestling does it so well. I'm surprised other sports don't do it a little more. Like boxing does it, right? They'll be having their meeting and then they spit on each other or something. And then you're like, oh, he's got to get him. They use it some. Sometimes sports, I actually heard someone suggest the other day that the WNBA might be doing some of that with the whole Caitlin Clark thing. Everyone hates her. And it's just to hopefully get you to want to tune in, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's true or not, but wrestling has always done a wonderful job of that. If you turn on a match or you go to one, the conflict really gets you, as opposed to just two guys wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, it's all storylines, and if we think about mainstream sports, I mean, what do we get the most excited for? When it's rival versus rival, or when a player leaves Team A and they go to Team B, and the first time that they come back as a part of Team B to Team A stadium, and how is the city going to react? I mean, we all love storylines in our sports, or these two athletes talk smack to each other. Now their teams are going up. I mean, so pro wrestling just is able just to manufacture and give that to you every single week, and that's the beauty of it.
So we're talking to Justin Labar. He had big news this past week. The WWE just launched a channel on SiriusXM, the WWE channel. What number is it on SiriusXM?
156. Yeah. So it's a hell of a story. I started contributing to the channel in 2020. So I've only been part of this for 6 years. It's a journey that goes back 16, 17 years. A guy named Dave LaGreca. Dave had been a radio guy. I think he worked covering the NFL for Sirius, working with the NFL channel. And then, he had always been a wrestling fan his whole life. And so 16, 17 years ago, it started with one day a week, and I think even just 1 hour, where they let him talk some wrestling, and he did a show. And then over the years, it went from 1 hour to 3 hours, and it went from 1 day to 2 days, 2 to 3, etc. Until finally, and I was contributing, just coming on, for a segment or two once a week. And then finally in 2023, the show was 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And it was on what was called, it was on channel 156, and the channel was called Fight Nation. And so Busted Open in the morning was the WWE programming, and then there was boxing and MMA programming otherwise. In 2023, they came to me and said, hey, we got really exciting news. We're going to expand the show. We're now going 7 days a week. How would you like to be the regular co-host for Sunday? And so I obviously ended up doing it, and it's been great. And then in June of 2025, it was announced that, okay, it's no longer going to be Channel 156 Fight Nation. It's now going to be Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7. And the MMA and the boxing programming was done away with. And now it was all pro wrestling programming throughout the day and the night. And then, this past week, the launch happened to where now it is a partnership. It's not called Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7 anymore. It is WWE Radio. It is a partnership. So that's just super exciting, because you have some marketing, and you have some of the WWE machine behind you, and putting an announcement post out to their hundreds of millions of followers. But it's still, it's still us, working for SiriusXM and having our great content, and still getting to have debates and have good content and callers and everything. So it's a real exciting time, WWE Radio, and it's so happy for Dave. And the success and applause goes to him first, because again, something he started for 1 hour, 1 day a week, 17 years ago, has blossomed into now where WWE, the biggest brand in the pro wrestling space, and one of the biggest brands just in general globally,
Is Vince McMahon still with WWE?
No.
Oh, he's not. Who owns WWE now?
So WWE is no longer owned by the McMahon. It's still a publicly traded company, but it's owned by a company called TKO, and TKO is what now owns WWE, owns the UFC.
Okay.
And so it's all under this TKO Holdings. So it's still publicly shared and traded.
Does that make Dana White involved with what you're doing then?
Dana oversees the UFC.
Okay.
He doesn't do anything with the WWE side of it.
Okay.
But, so WWE, again, it's as a brand, it's never been bigger, because, look at this, look at the powerhouses and the brilliant business minds they have at the top, at the boardroom. So yeah, it's pretty wild. But no, Vince is not involved anymore.
Did you ever meet him?
No, I never did.
So you'll be on Sundays, and if folks want to listen for you on Busted Open Radio, what's your time slot on Sunday?
9 a.m. to noon. 9 a.m. to noon every Sunday is when you can find me.
So Justin Labar. So we talked about you working for Trib Live, general manager there. Started in 2009. We talked about you starting a wrestling podcast that morphed into a satellite radio show now. Do you still do the radio? Do you still do the wrestling podcast as well, or just?
No. I stopped doing the podcasts that were just branded around my name, Chair Shot Reality or Wrestling Reality. I stopped those. And like I said, I stopped them. And then right about as 2020 happened, that's when I moved over and started contributing to SiriusXM. And so,
okay.
So I'm on, so there's the 3-hour show of Busted Open, and you got to obviously have SiriusXM to hear it. They do take about a 30-minute portion of the show of every Busted Open, and then they'll make it into like a 30-minute podcast. So you get, and that is free. So you get a little taste. If you don't have SiriusXM, the idea is here's a little taste of the podcast, via podcast of 1 or 2 topics. That does really well. You can go to any podcast store, you type in, WWE, or Busted Open's one of the top results. So that's a free way to get a little taste. But of course, again, encouraged to go to SiriusXM and subscribe and have the whole channel.
I wanted to shout out to Point Park University. One of my good friends is the dean of business there, Steve Tanzilli. Yeah, there you go. And I actually spoke. They had an entrepreneur class. They had me there. They were doing like people that when I quit the radio and kind of went on my own, they were like, "Oh, can we talk to you about that?" Because everybody thinks about doing that, right? And it's scary. So I spoke there in March. And when I was there, I noticed the studios. Mm-hmm. You said you did your show from those. There's nice studios there. They've got a nice layout.
Those studios are the brand new ones. Don't get me wrong. I thought the studios that we worked in when we were there were nice. That we started in the very original studios, which were located in the University Center, the big library, a few blocks down from the main part of the campus, and then somewhere in there, they opened up new studios that were on the corner of Wood and 3rd Avenue. And they kind of had like the glass backdrop. So you had like the street behind you. So the nice backdrop. So we went between those two studios, which are great. They've since, upgraded and moved to what you've now seen. But yeah, Point Park had always been great. I had, I was a student there, and then to be able to do the wrestling show there for so many years was fun and it basically became a class, because we the students in this particular production class, that was our crew for the semester. That was our technical director and camera people. And so it was a real, help make the product even better. But again, it gave them some real world experience. And some of them I know now, some of them are on air in this market and elsewhere. And it's always fun to think about them starting, with us on our show when they were in college.
That's a school on the rise. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're Division II in sports now. And I think I told you before we, off air, that my kids go to Lincoln Park Performing Arts Charter School out in Beaver County. I'm on the school board there, and we were able to get a partnership with because it's an arts high school and you're in an arts college.
Yeah.
So,
but Point Park's come a long way. I mean, when I started there was 2005, and I think they had only been a university for a year or two. They were at Point Park College previously. So from 2005 to 2009, and they were NAIA, and I was doing play-by-play as well for basketball and all that stuff. And they were NAIA, and to see them, the growth that they had for those 4 years, and then to see now, Division II, and again, the facilities, just when I thought the facilities couldn't get better, they upgraded studios. It's tremendous what they keep doing.
So we're talking to Justin Labar. And so we've talked about Trib Live. We've talked about, your wrestling show. What we didn't talk about, and I don't know if this is like your secret life, is you actually being involved in wrestling. And I did a little deep dive on Justin Labar this week when I knew he was going to be the guest. And I've known you a while, but I didn't know this side of you. So you were involved in wrestling locally here in Pittsburgh, and you were even, I guess you played like a manager. I shouldn't say played. You were a manager. This video, you just shared this week. Go follow Justin Labar if you don't already. What year is this from, Justin? And we'll explain what's happening here.
That's probably 2022.
Oh, so that's recent.
21, 22. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually one of the last matches probably that I, matches that I got myself involved in. It's probably, I can't remember which year, 21 or 22.
So in this scene, and there's a video for it. I just obviously screenshotted this off of your Twitter, but you had gone into the ring, and a guy that's on your team, you were checking on him, but then you were going to hit this guy. This is like a 7-foot wrestler here with a chair.
This is Big Cass, who they've been doing vignettes. He's getting ready to return to WWE here next in a week. They've been showing vignettes of him coming back. Big Cass is 7 foot tall.
Was this a WWE match, by the way?
No. This is this would be what they call independent wrestling. This was a show. There is a great promotion that's based here in Pittsburgh called IWC Wrestling, the International Wrestling Cartel. They're one of the independent wrestling companies that have been around the longest, and that have continued and never stopped and continued to do shows. They've been going for 25, 26 years. And so this is I think this is at the Ross Draver Ice Gardens is where that one was. I started with independent wrestling about the same time that the Chair Shot Reality podcast started in 2010. I had started working with some independent wrestling actually based in Cleveland. I didn't actually start working then with the Pittsburgh-based company IWC until a couple years later. And in the time, I've done some travel. I've done some shows down in the South and through Georgia, and that's an experience. But the whole idea, the how it all started was I never had any intention to be a pro wrestler. I didn't have the body. I didn't, but what I did want to do is I ended up getting involved with some independent shows because I thought, hey, this would be a great cross promotion with the podcast. And then eventually somewhere the cross promotion of, hey, here's Justin Labar from the Chair Shot Reality podcast, it eventually evolved into me just being a regular personality. And then, being a bad guy manager, antagonizing and being comfortable on the mic. So do some talking, cut a promo, sell the match. I'm doing more of the podcasting, and I was getting wrestlers into the studio, into the Point Park studios as guests. And so now I'm making contacts with wrestlers. So now it's like, hey, maybe I can get this wrestler booked on this independent show to come work. So it just kind of evolved. My thought was when it started was there are a lot of people that are going to podcast and talk about wrestling. Again, this is at 2010, 2011. So, not a lot of people then is way different than what a lot of people is now. And I just thought what's a way that I could try to stand out? I already had going for me that I had a little bit of behind the scenes exposure growing up as a kid to pro wrestling. My grandfather helped with some independent shows, and we drove some classic wrestlers from airport to venue and this and that. So I had a little bit of exposure there through some networking in college. I got a little bit of behind the scenes look at WWE through some networking. So I had a little bit of compared to the average other fan. And so I thought, well, what could I take it to the next level? And I thought, it'd be great if I could get involved in more shows. And obviously I'm not going to be able to snap my fingers and go work for WWE, but if I could get involved with these independent promotions that basically operate in a lot of ways like a AAA, like a minor league, if you use baseball terms, and these wrestlers are coming up and they're getting better and they're coming up to the independents with the hope to get signed to a big company on TV like a WWE or an AEW. So that's how it started. Was this would be great just to kind of see this experience. How they would do live streams that would be, and so they're doing essentially a TV show, and the wrestling company, the independent company I was working with in Cleveland, they were on TV. They were on Sports Night Ohio. So I thought that would just be fun to merge my broadcasting and TV background with pro wrestling. And somewhere along the way, I've never been, again, I would never, I have total respect for those who actually went through full wrestling training, who spent the money and the time, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. I never did that. So I never claimed to be a trained pro wrestler. But throughout the years, if you're going to be an antagonistic bad guy, the audience eventually wants to see you get yours. And so through the years, I would say I would have situational training. Okay, I know that I'm going to be, I'm going to eventually I'm going to be getting choke slam like you see here. So,
well, I was going to ask, that's what's happening there. So that choke slam is he grabbed your throat, picked you up, and then threw you. I mean, is that your only choke slam in your entire life right there by a 7-foot guy?
Maybe by 7. Well, no, I've been choke slammed. I've been choke slammed. I've been hit with chairs. I've had a good variety over the years. So no, that's not the only time.
So he's not special.
Well, no, he's 7 foot tall. Cass is one of the biggest. That's a long way up. That's a long way down.
And you know what? I got to say your form one more time. I'm going to take this off the screen and say, but look at the feet are above, like that's good. If you're going to get choke slammed, that's great form right there.
Well, again, I've had some training. I've had situations. So I have learned. This is what they would refer to as I'm taking a back bump. And anytime you take a move in the ring, they call it a bump, and it's just a matter of you taking a back bump, you taking a fake, like whatever. So, I've had situational training. So, I've took these bumps before. Again, I can't do what a fully trained pro wrestler can do. I don't have that athleticism, the jumping off the top, the jumping through. But when it comes time, if the loudmouth me, if it comes time for him to get his ass kicked for a moment, I've had enough of that happen to me in experience. And again, it was a good building of my brand, that's why I have a ring jacket. I had that leather jacket. And I was like, this is like 2012. I was like, 2012, 2013. I was like, what's the most annoying, egotistical thing I could do if I wanted to, again, be memorable? I'm not some big bulky guy, but I want fans in the audience.
What's this character's name? So this guy comes into the ring, and I watched the clip. By the way, it's on his. So you go to Justin Labar's socials, you'll see it. But you come in there. What's your character's name? Are you like?
I'm Justin Labar. No, I'm
Justin Labar.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying. I used it. What I started to do is I started to weave it as this is a great way to promote my podcast. Whether people love me or hate me, they're gonna at least tune in and whatever. Yeah. And so in 2013, I was like, what's the most annoying thing I could do? But that's something that people would remember me. So they walk away from the show and remember me. And so I'd always wear a leather jacket, either a black one or a white one. I had an airbrush my Twitter handle. And because I was verified on Twitter back when you couldn't pay for it, back when you had to be verified because Twitter deemed you, I had the blue check mark. I was like, this is so annoying. This is great. And I would wear white loafer shoes, as you can see in that image. Yeah. And so it was a way for me to be memorable, to stand out. Annoying shoes, leather jacket, with black dress pants. Just a complete ridiculous with my Twitter hand on the back. So so there was no, if you were a new fan, if you were brand new and never been at that show, you at least could look at my jacket and go, okay, that his name's Justin Labar. So even if you didn't know anybody else, even if you were being brought to the show by your buddy for the first time, you could at least right there type my handle in on social, and you could at least. So that was my branding. That was my marketing.
So your character on the radio, on your radio show, do you start a lot of trouble? Like I saw you post about Mark Madden, that you were friends with him. Like his act, he's straight up wrestler, right? He's the guy that comes in and makes fun of your mom. I remember I heard Mark Madden on the radio. So I didn't get to hear him much on the radio because we were on the same time slot in Afternoon Drive a lot of years. But one year I got done with my show, got in my car, and I just turned on to hear a little clip of his show. And he was like, "It's Mark Madden. We're at this bar in Green Tree, and the waitresses are so ugly here. They fell off the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down." And I heard he's in the bar, right? And I heard one of the waitresses go, "Fuck you." It got on the airwaves. You know what I mean? And I thought, he's really saying that about the waitresses right in their face like that. Like,
well, I don't know.
You go there.
I don't know. Well, first off, again, when I was just with Chair Shot Reality and Wrestling Reality, when those still existed, when I was still doing those, I would lean in lightly to the way that I was stepping into a ring. I would, the bad guy manager, I would be a little antagonistic or what have you. But I tried to keep it also. I needed to keep credibility. So I also, people don't want to see that shtick the whole time. If they're tuning in the podcast, they won't actually hear you talk about wrestling, whatever. So when I did that on Sirius XM, I try to keep it pretty professional. I don't, it might be in some good fun with my co-hosts, might be jousting each other, but no, I try to keep it pretty professional and pretty, credible now on that particular platform. And, now that we're WWE radio, there's plenty of other former wrestlers that are on the channel that are co-hosting Busted Open on different days. I don't need to try to be doing their shtick. So my co-host and I will sometimes will reference and talk about when I have done the bad guy managing and been in the ring, and I can pull from some of those experiences, but I don't want to come off as like I have the experience that some of my other co-hosts on the channel that have been, again, WWE wrestlers. I don't have that experience. And so I don't want to, so I just accept and talk more that I'm just a fan who has gotten a lot of access and trying to gain insight and gain experiences. So I just try to stay in my lane as best I can in that regard.
So I want to get your opinion. So Sports Illustrated rated the top 20 best wrestlers of all time. I think this is most famous, best, however you want to say it. It was best top wrestlers of all time. And Rowdy, I'll just start from 13. This is when the names start to get, I think, that most people know him. Number 13, Roddy Piper. Number 12, Kurt Angle. Mm-hmm. I was kind of surprised to see him up that high. And like when you get against, but I mean, I was happy. That's cool. Sometimes you live in Pittsburgh and you don't know if everyone else likes Kurt Angle as much as you do.
No, Kurt's one of them. Kurt is known as this. Kurt is widely recognized by most people, wrestlers, his peers, and fans. Nobody took to learning pro wrestling quicker than him and got to the level that he did. Like, 'cause I mean, obviously we know Kurt was a tremendous gold medal Olympic amateur wrestler.
Yeah.
And then he learned pro wrestling, debuted in learned pro wrestling relatively quickly learns, okay, the finish is predetermined. You don't have to take somebody to the ground he debuts in WWE, I think in November of 99. And like 11 months later, he was world champion. And then he continued to rise. And then not only that, and the things that he could do in the ring in terms of athleticism and toughness, but then they started to get to show the comedy side of him, and he could be funny. And there's a whole other life of his career of like just hilarious clips that live on forever of like interactions he had, and just he's funny. I mean, so no, Kurt definitely. I'm at 12. I have no problem with him being on at number 12.
Number 11, Macho Man Randy Savage. I thought he might have been higher on the list just because he's such a character.
I think, unfortunately, Macho Man, who, passed away via car accident tragically 15, 16 years ago. I think the only reason I think he's not higher, unfortunately, is because he left the WWE in 1994. He wasn't really wrestling anymore. They were using him as in an announcer kind of spot, which from what I heard, he didn't love. So he left. He goes to WCW, and he was there from 94 till WCW until like 2000. He never got brought for the remainder of the time that he was alive. He never got brought back to WWE TV. It's still one of those forever unknowns of like, did Vince still hold a grudge? Like what? Why? And then unfortunately he passed away, and then they inducted him in the Hall of Fame a few years later after he unfortunately has already passed, so he couldn't even be there to be on stage to accept the induction. I think because he wasn't kept prominent by the WWE, by having to make appearances on TV or anything like that. I think, unfortunately, every year that the fans get older or newer, they only know of Macho Man from watching older tapes, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably the only reason I could think, because when he was a performer, he was top notch.
Number 10, Bruno Sammartino. And that's another one that kind of surprised me just because, I've been in Pittsburgh since college, raised my family here. And I mean, I know him, everybody talks about Bruno Sammartino here, but to be a top 10 of all time, according to Sports Illustrated in wrestling, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, he was champion for years, and then whatever the record is, you can look it up. That he sold out the Garden however many times and all those years. I mean, yeah, it was a different time. Again, it was still wrestling was still regional. There, it wasn't national. It was before cable. So, and again, just because he's from a different era, that's probably why he's not higher. But again, 10 is still very, very
respectable.
Respectable.
Number 9, Bret Hart.
Often considered one of the best in ring. He's kind of like he was before Kurt Angle. He's kind of a lot of people say Kurt and Bret would have been a great dream match. Had Bret not gotten Bret got injured in the ring in '99, and then I think he had a stroke afterward. And so his full-time career got unfortunately cut short. But yeah, he's arguably by many people one of the best bell-to-bell wrestlers ever. One of them, top ones.
Number 8, Shawn Michaels.
Again, one of the best bell-to-bell performers, but where Bret was a great bell-to-bell performer, but Bret wasn't necessarily the top talker, the top promo. Shawn had a big personality, and he could also talk in the building. So when wrestling made a transition from the 80s and early 90s of what was big guys, and they transitioned them to more average 6-foot size guys, Shawn and Bret were the leaders of that time for the business.
Number 7, Triple H.
Yeah. Again, a guy that, great bell to bell, great mind. And he's the one you asked me. He's the one, Dave, I don't know if you know this, but Triple H is the one who is in control. He's the chief, the actual title, chief content. He's the one that runs all the creative now of day-to-day of WWE today. So he's running all that. He's putting the match together. He's leading the team of who's going to be the champion. He's a leader behind the scenes.
Number 6, The Undertaker.
Yeah.
And I mean, his character, you see him, you know him. I think even if you don't watch wrestling, you've seen him, you've heard of him. Maybe one of the great characters in wrestling. Would you agree with that?
Arguably one of the greatest characters. I mean, and when he debuts in November of 1990, it's like, okay, how long can this guy who is supposed to be kind of like dead, like a walking zombie, like how long could this gimmick actually last? And funny enough, he made it last 30 plus years. He had an incredible run of 21 years of never losing at WrestleMania. And he works behind the scenes. He's over WWE or TKO that owns WWE. TKO also now owns the top wrestling promotion in Mexico called AAA. The Undertaker is booking. He's running that. He's doing what Triple H is doing for WWE. He's doing that there, booking the matches. Cheap plug, The Undertaker, if you can believe this or not, he protected his character for all those years. He very rarely did media and interviews. He really protected the character. If you see him in the airport, he'd be wearing all black. I mean, he really protected the character. Once he retired, he's opened up. He's done interviews. Well, now he has a podcast. It's called 6 Feet Under, and that podcast, you can hear it on WWE Radio every single week.
I love it. All right, so now we're moving into, these are the top 5 wrestlers of all time, according to Sports Illustrated. Number 5, Roman Reigns.
He's the top guy today. He's the WWE champion today. He's part of the legendary Samoan family, Samoan dynasty. So everything from, his father was one half the Wild Samoans. Yokozuna was a cousin of his. The Rock is a cousin of his. Long Samoan family lineage, and he's the top guy right now.
Number 4, John Cena.
Yeah,
so he's a movie star.
Yeah, John's done everything. He John has had. It's incredible when you realize how long he was on top in terms of being a top guy. I mean, it's and that he was a workhorse. He would work every night. He made every town, and this is when WWE's business had some ups and downs over the last 25 years, and he was always reliable. So yeah, I mean, obviously, and then he's transitioned to being I don't know how many things he's a spokesperson for, but you can see him or hear him in so many commercials. It's unbelievable because he's John Cena.
He's one of the top personalities, period.
Yes,
out there,
and really funny too. Really, like if you see him in Hollywood and he's doing some of these comedy, he's really funny.
All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put the top 3 on the board, and I think this is where I want to see, because I was a little surprised by who's 1, who's 2, who's 3. Here they are. This is according to Sports Illustrated, the top 3 wrestlers of all time. Here they are. Number 3, The Rock. Number 2, Hulk Hogan. number one, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Justin Labar. If you were putting that list together, would you keep that the same or would you change it?
I definitely keep 1 and 2 as Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan. Stone Cold to me is, to me, he's my number one. I think the drawing power that he had at the time that it was, he wasn't the top guy for as many years like John Cena was. And again, part of that is because Steve fell to injury, and so that kind of shortened things up for him. But I mean, it was just like, there was Hulkamania in the 80s, and then Stone Cold had his run of the Attitude Era. It's just, obviously Hulk Hogan had to do Hulk Hogan for Stone Cold to do Stone Cold, and if not for Hogan, the business doesn't grow, and it probably doesn't get to the level in the late 90s for Stone Cold to put in the work and flourish. So certainly, you have to have Hogan to give respect to Hogan. But yeah, I put Stone Cold as number one. The name that you didn't give me, so it must have been greater than 13. Was Ric Flair? I didn't see Ric Flair.
I don't know that he was in the top 20. Andre the Giant was number 16. I was a little surprised he was down that far because he's pretty famous. Hang on, I'll tell you if top 20. Now you got me here. Top wrestlers of all time. Here's the Sports Illustrated story. Number 20 is Becky Lynch. She was only female. 19, Mick Foley. 18, Chris Jericho. 17, CM Punk. You know what? Ric Flair might have been on here. 16. Did I miss one? 17. 16 was Andre the Giant. 15, Randy Orton. 14, Edge. Yeah, so Ric Flair's not in their top 20.
Interesting.
It is surprising. You would have him in your top 20?
Well, I mean, yeah, again, how I say like Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, how they're some of the best bell-to-bell wrestlers. I mean, most of them would say Rick was the greatest bell-to-bell. And I mean, the only thing I can say why Rick wouldn't be there is because you had when WWE and Hulk Hogan and WWF were exploding in the 80s. Rick wasn't Rick was wrestling for the competitor. He was wrestling for the NWA, which was an alliance of a bunch of the regional promotions. And so he didn't have necessarily the same level of exposure of I guess national exposure as like Hogan did. So I guess maybe that's why, but I mean, Ric Flair's often regarded. I mean,
I was disappointed that my guy, so I'm from Memphis, and when I was on the radio in Memphis, I had Jerry the King Lawler on my show many times. This is me and my sister Charity with him when he was running for mayor of Memphis. If you notice, he has vote Lawler for mayor. Yeah. He came in third in 99. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but he wasn't in the top 20. And I think he was out, when regional wrestling was the thing too. But he's had a career. He's been an announcer, right, for WWE for a long time.
I was going to say, he's not anymore, but yeah, he so it depends on what your age and generation is. Obviously, yeah, he was huge, obviously, in Memphis,
80s
and the 90s. And then, yeah, he would be, your color commentator for TV through the rise of Stone Cold and the rise of Kurt Angle. So it's funny to some people, they obviously remember him fondly as a tough guy in the ring, but then to a whole other generation, he's part of their soundtrack of these memorable moments with the next generation of wrestlers, because he was so funny on commentary with the quips that he would have. So he's he's.
Did you ever meet Jerry Lawler?
Yeah. Actually, he was one of the first guests that we ever had on Chair Shot Reality back probably again 2010, 2011.
I had him come in a few times. He would sit in and just co-host the morning show with me on a country music station in Memphis, Tennessee when I was down there. I was on a Froggy. You can see the T-shirt there.
That's huge.
He was a great guy. When he did the movie with Jim Carrey in the 90s, Man on the Moon, he came in after that, and we talked all about that. But great guy. I just looked him up. He said that he lives in Memphis now, but he had a stroke last year again, and he's kind of in poor health in his 70s.
Yeah, that's sad to hear. He actually, I mean, this is, it's sad to hear that he had a I don't know if you knew this. I don't remember the year. It was somewhere like at least.
Yeah, he had like a stroke like during the match or something like that.
Yeah, like he was in the ring. It was at least 10 years ago, I think. He was in the ring. He got, because he's still a Cajun, because he was in such great shape. you know, he still was in good shape, and he still, when he wasn't doing the broadcasting on a Monday for WWE, he'd still go and work independent shows and still wrestle. Again, he was in pretty decent shape. So occasionally they'd have him wrestle for like a one-off or something, you know, in WWE, and he was in the ring, did a match, and then he went back to the commentary table at ringside. And yeah, he had I think it was a heart attack,
like a brain bleed, or something.
Like, it was scary because he was there at the commentary table, you know, dealing with that, and so they're trying, and they're live on TV, they're live on Monday Night Raw, so they were having to, you know, get EMTs to get him while this live show's going on in front of 10,000 people in the arena. It was crazy scary.
Well, there's my brush with, so I obviously knew Jerry Lawler in Memphis, and then I've had Kurt Angle on here in Pittsburgh. But so would you say, you know, in your time, you know, being in wrestling and touring some and seeing other markets, like you said, where is wrestling the hottest in the United? What are the best markets, and is Pittsburgh up there with them?
Pittsburgh's got a lot of history. I wouldn't put it in the same conversation. I think
two of the top 20 wrestlers are from here. It's pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, no, there's some great history and some great breeding ground. Most of the time when you say, or right, I think a lot of people would say Chicago. Chicago is often widely regarded as the loudest and best audience. The one arena there, not the United Center that everybody knows from like the Michael Jordan days, but there's another arena that's in the city. It's just a little more north. A lot of your wrestlers will say that that's their favorite arena in terms of the way the sound was and how loud it was and the fans. I've been to that venue and I can attest to that. Chicago's talked about. Philadelphia is known very much for having, you know, Philadelphia, and then New York, that they're very known for having.
So the northern markets, you just named three. I mean, Chicago, Philly, and New York. See, I always thought growing up in the South that's where the wrestling was at. But
well, when it was more territories, I think that's true. You know, that there was a strong presence in the South. I mean, it's not to say there's not still good cities in the South, but like in terms of national TV, you know, I think most people, if they were to rattle off the top 3 cities, you're going to hear the loudest crowds in the U.S. It's going to be in some order: Chicago, Philadelphia, New York. You know, and then they go international, and the international fans are a blast because, you know, they might not get to see like a WWE as often, you know, maybe only once a year, once every few years. And so they really get loud. And then, you know, a lot of, you know, you get like the soccer chants going, they get real crazy and animated. So that's a lot of fun. WWE's doing more events internationally than they ever have, more televised events, I should say. So that's been a lot of fun to watch and see. But yeah, in the US, I'd say Chicago, Philly, New York, and Chicago is number 1. And then you can argue New York or Philly.
And real quick here, wrestling moves. I looked up the top 3 most famous wrestling moves of all time. Stone Cold Stunner, number 1. That was a Stone Cold Steve Austin move. Number 2, RKO. That's a Randy Orton move.
That's a Randy Orton move, and that's been the most viral. You've probably seen. So there's a thing called RKO out of nowhere. So like Randy Orton, at times he's known that he could just, his nickname's the Viper, so he could strike like a viper snake anytime, and so he can hit an RKO by just standing near you, so you can not see it coming. It's not like other moves where you can see them physically setting up for it. So he can just RKO you out of nowhere. That's kind of like the gimmick sometimes, and so that kind of became a viral trend that like you'd see like a kid walking down like the walking down the hall at school.
Come up next to him and
somebody come
slam him. Okay.
Yeah, come RKO him and whatever. And
that's not a body slam. That's a but you basically grab their head and fall.
Yeah, you're putting your arm around their neck and you're dragging them face forward to the ground. That's essentially what that is.
And then the Stone Cold Stunner. I mean, you don't want to do that at home. That's where you get the guy and their heads between your knees, basically, and you drop down.
No,
right?
you're thinking that's a pile driver. That's Jerry Lawler's move. No, Stone Cold Stunner again. It's there's some similarities to RKO, except rather than putting your arm around their neck and then driving them face first to the ground. The stunner, you give them a kick in the stomach to get them to bend over, and then you basically put their chin on your shoulder and you drop to your ass. And that's a good one there. Yeah.
And then the sweet chin music, I don't know that one. That's third.
It's very very base. It's famous, but it's a very simple. It's Shawn Michaels' finishing move, and it was basically it's basically a kick to the face, but he would set it up real big. So he'd stomp his foot on the mat and get the people clapping with the stomp. And then he'd go, and then he would basically just kind of move towards them real quickly, moving side to side. And then he would just give a big kick right to the face, or to the chin, rather, sweet chin music.
But over the years, people coming off the ropes onto, or tag teaming and then hitting them with the arms. There's so many famous wrestling moves.
Well, the trick with a wrestling move is in my opinion, is like you want it, especially these are all called finishers. So it's the move that they're going to try to always end their match with, and that's the move that's going to beat their opponent. The tricky thing is you got to pick a move. One, you want to pick a move that you can kind of hit somewhat quickly. Two, you want to do a move that you can do to anybody of any size. Stone Cold Stunner is great because it doesn't matter if the person is, if you're 6 foot and they're 7 foot and they're 100 pounds heavier than you. All you got to do is kick, and then you can get them to bend down, and then you just drop and give them a stunner. So that was a great move for that purpose because he could hit it to anybody. And you also want to move that like you can do every night, every week. Hulk Hogan famously had the big leg drop, but that meant that every single night his 6'7" body is going up in the air and dropping to his ass. I mean, you can imagine the pain to your tailbone and to your hips, and
doing a lot of wear and tear on that move.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a trampoline. The wrestling ring is not a trampoline. I mean, there's plywood underneath that mat, so it's that's why the Sweet Chin music was great, because again, it was something that like Shawn could do every night. It wasn't like a taxing move to his body, and he wasn't having to hit the ground or anything. And again, it was a kick to the face, so he could do it to most any opponent. It didn't matter their size or whatever. So that's what I think a good move is got to be able to just get to it quick.
Do you have a favorite wrestling move of all time?
I love the stunner because, like I said, I'm a Stone Cold guy. Jake the Snake Roberts did it. His was called a DDT. He's known that he invented the DDT. Basically, kind of came up. It's you put a guy's head right here between basically in your armpit, and then you drop to your back and just drive their head to the mat. And he kind of came up with it. The story is it came up with it by accident. He kind of tripped and did it, and it became a move. I think that's good because again, it looks violent, but it's something you can do to anybody. You can do it quickly. Jerry Lawler's pile driver is great, but I mean, pile driver is one of those things. It's arguably one of the most risky moves that you do because there's little margin for error dropping somebody.
You could break their neck.
Yeah. The matter of fact, I mean, you don't see it as often anymore because depending on which company you're watching, which wrestling promotion, some companies have policies about can you do that move at all, or if you're going to do it, you have to get like a specific okay from the bosses of you can do this move. Like the Undertaker, like famously, he did a tombstone pile driver. It was just a variation on what Jerry Lawler did. He would have the body their body facing a different way. He famously was always able to do it because he was the Undertaker. But for the most part, otherwise you didn't in WWE. You didn't get a lot of allowance to be doing pile drivers.
Justin, thank you so much for doing this podcast, and everyone listen to his same show that's on the XM channel. I'm sorry, the WWE channel,
WWE Radio
on Sirius XM, Busted Open Radio, and that's when they get the razor blade and slice you, and then you come over and hit it, right? And it bleeds everywhere. That's what I always heard. That's how they get you bleeding, but I don't know if that's for sure. If they're still
that's one way that you can manufacture. If you need to manufacture blood, there's that way. Again, depending on what wrestling company you're watching, whether or not they allow that, it just depends. But that's one way.
Or you could just open it up the old-fashioned way with the knuckle sandwich.
That's called the hard way. So the only time I bled was because of the hard way. So,
Justin, thank you for your time. We'll be listening on Sunday, and obviously, with Trib Live, the High School Sports Network as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man, and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you, sir.